So I'm now going to talk about changing the gearbox oil. Citroen have, I think the interval is about 20,000 miles to change the gearbox oil, and there's also a mention of level plug check, so checking the oil level. The problem I have with you checking the oil level is you unscrew the bolt on the bolt on the side of the gearbox, and if oil dribbles out, then you have enough oil in your gearbox. Problem is, if no oil dribbles out, you don't know how much oil you need to put in to top it up to the right level. You could just pour it in until it pours out again, but my recommendation is, why bother with that? If you've got an issue and it's about time you change it anyway, drain the whole lot and put in the correct quantity from the top, and then you know you've got the right quantity of gearbox oil. Therefore, forget about the checking procedure. We'll drain the gearbox oil from underneath, which can be done on axle stands, and getting underneath it you obviously need to be safe. We're going to be doing it on a hoist because we need to film it and it's much easier to do. But in order to get access to the filler plug, we need to take the shroud off. Two methods of doing that. One is to just take off the fabric part, or release the fabric part, which is held on with 6 screws onto the radiator on this particular radiator, which is the larger radiator with a header tank on a GS23. And then you should be able to allows you to move the fabric part just out of the way, just enough to be able to access the filler plug on the top of the gearbox. The other method is actually to take the whole shroud out, which gives you far better access, but obviously means a bit more work. Your call. So we'll now take the shroud off the easy way and see how we get on. A little bit more. I'm hanging out, perfect. Yeah, awkward it is. So here we have the oil filler plug for the gearbox. I'm just showing it here with the shroud just taken away from the radiator on this 23. And although you can see it, access is still limited and I'm having to hold the shroud back. So I wouldn't recommend this method, but I'm showing it for completeness. I'm now going to take the whole shroud off in order to be able to access that filler plug easier. So now that I've removed the shroud from the radiator, we now have easy access to the gearbox filler plug, which is here. It's in slightly different positions on different gearboxes. This is a 5-speed manual gearbox, which has 1 filler plug but 2 drain plugs. We'll come to that when we get under the car to drain the gearbox oil. The size is 21mm, which is the same size as the spark plug socket, which is what I'm using here. And it shouldn't be tight. You can just crack it off. It also has a copper washer on it, which you need to either renew or you can anneal the copper washer to make it seal. There you are. So I'll leave that like that and then we'll drain the gearbox from underneath. So here we are with the car up on the hoist. I've already removed the under tray and the brake ducts, but there is a hole in the under tray where you can access the drain plug of the gearbox here. This is the main one here, and because this is a 5-speed manual, you've got a secondary one up here. So size is the same as the filler plug, which is 21mm spark plug size. And basically all you just crack it off and then you can undo it by hand, and having a suitable receptacle beneath you to catch somewhere between 2 and 2 1/4 litres of oil. And there we go. Oh, that's actually lovely. So we let that one dry. Also on the filler plugs, this particular one has got a magnet on it, which is nice because it will pick up any little bits of metal that you don't want to have grinding around in your gears. But that needs to be all to be cleaned off before you put it back in. Also, there's a copper washer on each of these drain plugs, which needs to be taken off and either replaced or annealed before you put it back in to make it soft so it then seals. So we'll leave this one draining, and as it's doing the same thing, I will crack off the other one. These don't have to be particularly tight, but obviously they have to seal and crush the washer in order to do its job. Here we go. The reason there's 2 drain plugs is that the 5th speed has got its own little casing mainly because it's just an addition to the gearbox. Instead of recasting a new gearbox casing for the 5-speed, they just added a bit on for the 4-speed, so it's cost from Mr. Citroen. So there you are, let those drain for a little bit until nothing else comes out, and then we can go by putting the plugs back in. So just going to clean the surface of where the drain plug goes, and I've cleaned the plug and I have a new washer on it. And pop it in, screw it up, tighten it up by hand. Then I'm using a large breaker bar here, but you don't need to put a huge amount of force on it because it is only an aluminium housing, but the big breaker bar just makes life easy. We do the same on the main filler plug, which is still slightly dripping, but as this has got quite nice oil that's come out of it, I'm not too worried if there's a little bit of oil stays in the gearbox. But just clean around where the washer is going to seal. And once again, I've cleaned the plug, and it's got a new washer on it, and it has a lovely clean magnet on it, which is all good stuff. And once again, just nip it. Again, not super tight, but you're just a nice tightness. So for completeness, I'm just going to show you this here is the oil level plug, which you can use to check the oil level. And it's a 14mm spanner size. And the idea is you take that bolt out, and when the car is sitting level, oil should just dribble out, indicating you have the right quantity of oil in the gearbox. I'm not going to do that because I've drained it completely and I'm putting in the right quantity anyway, so I know I've got the right amount of oil in the gearbox. So here we are topping up the gearbox oil. A couple of things before we actually top it up is, first of all, viscosity. Citroens specify EP80, extreme pressure, that's what EP stands for. You can't or struggle to get a straight EP80 grade, so you get a multi-grade nowadays, which is EP80-90 or 75-90. All of these are perfectly acceptable. Second thing is you get a different grade. Now the modern grade of oil is called GL5, and you don't want to fit that in your DS gearbox. So the quality you want to fit in is GL4 or less, a mineral oil, but not GL5 because you'll end up wearing your synchromeasures out, which I won't bother going into. The third thing is two different gearboxes. 5-speed gearboxes take 2¼ litres, and all the 4-speeders take 2 litres. And the final thing to do is, when you're topping it up, make sure you've put the bungs in the bottom before you put the oil in the top. Don't ask me how I know. And because of the viscosity and the size of the hole, this is quite slow. But we're not in a hurry, and the thunderstorm is raging around us. And we can just let that drain in nicely. Okay, so the oil's now drained in nicely. I'll take away my funnel, give the surrounding of the filler plug just a little wipe because we don't want dirt to get jammed under the washer or into the gearbox if we can possibly help it. Cleanliness being next to godliness. And then a new washer or an annealed washer on your filler plug. And once again, tightening up. It only needs to be nipped. You don't need to be really nasty to it, just enough so it's not going to undo itself and it's going to seal.